All right, we are here on the Just on the Suffering podcast. Giants season is over. Unfortunate ending, but still a successful year overall. Join me today, great friend of the podcast. They were on their game last week talking about the Giant Eagle game. Jerry Foley is back with us. Jerry, how are you?
Good, man. How are you, bud?
Pretty good. I got to say, I was listening to you guys last week in the run-up to the game, and you guys nailed it in terms of the fact that, remember you guys going back and forth saying, hey, if Philly is able to run the football, this game is not going to be close. And that was exactly what happened here. So give me some general thoughts about this game besides that.
Yeah, look, the Giants had to stop something, and they stopped nothing. And the result was 38-7. I mean, they were absolutely gashed for, I think it was 268 yards. And, Gainwell led the way, like 12 for 112 or something like that. And, I mean, look, it was such a bad the talent disparity was great, and we all talked ourselves into momentum and team of destiny, and this feels like 2007. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, the Eagles are loaded, and it started off second play of the game, Devontae Smith beats Julian Love, kind of like the way he beat him in the first game for a touchdown, and from there it was over. I mean, it was just, you could see how talented they were. The onslaught was on. And the Eagles did exactly anything they wanted to do to the Giant defense. They did, ran the ball. They didn't even have to pass the ball that much, but when they had to, they got it done. So yeah, it was a disaster from the start, man.
Yeah, you also know that like Nick Sirianni loves rubbing in by stopping short of the goal line there, sticking Boston Scott and scoring another touchdown against the Giants.
Oh yeah, look, he's the new villain, right? I mean, he's almost become classless in my eyes, and the way he's nodding his head and acting like a buffoon on the sidelines, like, he's going to become public enemy number one with the Giants, and maybe that's what he wants, right? Maybe he, in a weird way, he likes the attention on himself. But yeah, I mean, look, we were talking about it on our podcast. Chris and I were saying, like, I haven't seen this kind of someone act like that since like Barry Switzer. Like, it was, I couldn't think of like who to think of, like what coaches act like that. And Chris mentioned Pete Carroll early on, and he did do that stuff. So, the nodding of the head is going to be a gif for a very long time. And if the Eagles have to lose, I think everybody's going to throw that at them. So, look, he seems to relish it, but he's opening himself up for a lot of criticism and a lot of taunting back to him. But maybe that's what he wants. Maybe he thrives on that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's certainly interesting to see what happens to them here. I also feel like the big takeaway from this game, besides the talent disparity, was Brian Daboll's fourth down decisions. Obviously, he goes for it on this first drive on the 4th and 8. He punts from his 42 down 3 scores in the fourth quarter. I think he made the right call the first time around. I feel like he saw after the first drive and said, hey, you know what, like, we're not going to stay in this game with these teams unless we're going score for score with them, so I'm going to try and keep this drive alive. Lewa didn't really guess until he goes for it on 4th again later. What do you think about his fourth down mentality?
Yeah, I didn't like the first time, and I said that on our podcast. It was 4th and 8, and I understand why he did it. It would have been a 57-yard field goal or a punt. And when you have Jamie Gallant, I guess you don't trust him to put it inside the 20. But if you don't get it, they just get the ball there and they can do what they want. I would have punted and lived to fight another day. Even if he gets it in the end zone, it's still 20 yards back. And it ended up being, it would have been 28 yards back because Jones was sacked for an 8-yard loss. The Giants aren't set up offensively to convert a 4th and 8 like that against Philly's defense. I mean, you could pull that off against the Vikings even. But against Philly, man, I was like, dude, just live the fight another day. Punt the ball. And I get all the arguments against it, but I wouldn't have gone for it. And I said it at the time. I didn't like it. And I felt like the game was truly over when he didn't convert there. And as for the fourth quarter, that just made no sense. This was the only time where I questioned the coaching, in game all season long. I didn't like coming out, firing the ball at them and throwing the ball, acting as if you were playing the Vikings again. Would have given the ball to Saquon earlier, even down 14-0. I would have pounded Saquon a bit because that was the path to victory. So they made a bunch. Look, the disparity in talent was what did it, but they made a lot of questionable moves in this game. Wink Martindale playing off receivers. Like, I just didn't like the game plan at all. But hey, man, it was Daboll's still a great coach. They have the right pieces in place as far as the coaching staff. I just didn't love this game plan, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, obviously this game plan is disappointing. The loss is disappointing, but overall, the Giant fans, I haven't talked to one who's not happy how the season has gone here. I mean, going into this season a lot, talk about, is this the worst team in the league? You go number one, take Bryce Young in the draft. You're just tanking here. Instead, you're 7-1. You win a playoff game, and then you're in Philly on divisional weekend. No one could have seen that coming.
No, I mean, we had this as a 4-2, if they were lucky, 7-win team. And really they're 9-7-1, but that tie was so important. It was almost like they were 10-7. I mean, it's semantics, but to go from 4-13 and, Jake Fromm being told to, quarterback sneak it from his own 5-yard line, just the laughing stock of the league, to a team now with respectability and a solid foundation and coaching. I mean, I think Daboll walks away with Coach of the Year. I think you have to be insane not to give it to him. But even his coordinators were great. And, Casca brought over some of that KC mentality. I'd love to see what he can do with more talent. And even Wink, right? Like Wink Martindale, he lives and dies by the blitz. That's why I was a little disappointed in this one. But anyway, they have a great coaching staff. I hope, selfishly, I hope they don't get jobs. But personally, I hope they get jobs because they deserve it, especially Wink. But I would love to have them back next year with Daboll and give them, another year's worth of talent to really see what this team can do. But yeah, man, I mean, what a great hire Daboll's been. He's been incredible.
Absolutely here. And obviously they had their year-end press conference on day of recording with Daboll and Joe Schoen. There was a lot of stuff going on here. And obviously they have a lot of big questions in the offseason. The biggest one right now is Daniel Jones, who obviously made up a lot of money in the offseason here. He's kind of said, I want to be here, but he's not saying how much he wants. And then they were talking about, we got to be careful with this. So how do you think the Giants going to approach this new contract for Daniel Jones?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what Shane said, is that, look, he wants them back, but there's a business side to this. And, you can't overpay or else you have buyer's remorse. I love that from Shane. And I was saying, I think now it's, I just wrote a column called it Shane season, because up until this point, it's been Brian Daboll, right? I mean, Shane and Daboll came over here. And look, Shane had the draft. He had to get the cap in order. He had to make moves like cutting James Bradbury. He picked up guys like Isaiah Hodgins, and he's done a tremendous job. But now it's his time to really, I don't want to say overshadow Daboll, but it's his time. It's his time of year, right? He's got all this. He's going to have all this cap space. He's going to have anywhere between 9 and 11 picks. Right now they have 9, but I think they can get 11 based on what they lost. I don't know if it's coaching or if it's players, but there's something there that's still a variable where they can get more draft picks. And then re-signing guys, right? And this is where he's going to earn his money. And I think I have total faith in him based on what he's done. And they've worked magic up to this point. I think they figured it out with Jones. I think they figured it out with Barkley. And I literally think, dude, that everyone else is a crapshoot. Nothing else would surprise me whether they stay or go other than Barkley and Jones. I think those are the two that stay. And I think as far as the rest of the free agents, it wouldn't stun me if all of them left. Now, I don't think that will happen, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. But this is his time, and I think he'll get it done with Jones. I think he definitely wants to, and I think he's going to get it done with Barkley. I think letting Barkley walk is just ridiculously short-sighted. Anybody who's saying, you don't pay a running back, I mean, I think Barkley, that sweet spot for him is going to be in the 10 to 15 million range. I think they can get it done. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, I think in terms of the Jones situation, I think the thing that interests me specifically is I was assuming all along, they'll sign one before free agency, tag the other one, they can't get a deal done. It sounds like they may not even use the tag for either guy. I think it's an interesting business decision here, considering the running back value is $10 million, I think, for the tag roughly, and the quarterback is 33, which if either one of them gets the market, they should get paid because both of these guys, there's at positions where there's going to be a lot of demand in the offseason.
Yeah, they may have to use it on one of them. They're going to want to bring them back. If they use it on one, that's fine. It's just going to be interesting to see how it plays out and how much they demand. And I think both sides, if I'm Jones, I'm smart too. Look, this is a business. I want to be back, but let's see what the offer is. I think it'll be very good. I think we'll be very happy. What I love is that they're not going to have to cripple themselves the way the Dallas Cowboys have. I mean, Giants are in a great spot. Jones is not going to be paid like a top 5, top 8 quarterback, but he's going to be probably that next level. So you can still build your roster because of that. And as far as Barkley, it's just, if you have to franchise him for 1 year, you franchise him, and then see where that goes. He's the face of the franchise. I would love to see him come back. But I think they'll figure it out with the two of them. I think the Giants are smart enough to realize that Barkley has a lot left. Jones is on the uptick. Let's keep these guys. Let's figure this out. And then you work on, extensions eventually for Dexter Lawrence, Andrew Thomas, Xavier McKinney. And, we always talk about what's funny is a year ago, you didn't want to keep anybody. And now it's, oh my God, can we keep all these guys? Can we figure this out? So.
Yeah, that's for sure here. And in terms of the salary cap situation, it sounds like obviously they're in a much better situation than they were a year ago, where Shane basically just took his medicine the first year, so I'm going to get rid of all these bad contracts I can in order to get things done here. I feel like there's still moves he made here. I mean, like, is there anybody that's an obvious cut besides Kenny Golladay who I feel like is going to be gone regardless?
No, but Leonard Williams is going to be interesting, dude, because I think it's like $32 million right now for next year, and he's not worth that. They're going to have to restructure. But if they cut him, I think they save it's like 8 or 12. I just looked at it. I don't think they'd cut him, but I think they have to get that cap number down because he's too much of a hit. I mean, $32 million for, no offense, but it's kind of invisible Sunday in the biggest game. So you got to figure that out. Adoree Jackson's another one, right? They could save, I think, $8 million or so if they decide to move on. He was pushed around. He was bullied in that game. I think he's a very good corner. So I'm not saying I want him gone, but those are the two that you got to watch because they're going to count a lot towards the cap. I think Jackson's like $19 million or something. I think, but those two are the ones to keep an eye on because they've got to figure something out at least with Williams at the very least. Yeah,
I was looking at it here. It's like you're right. They said Leonard Williams. They say $12 million if they cut him, and they have $20 million dead cap. And Jackson, I think, is 10.5 dead cap and 8.5.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting with that situation also here. I think watching, this decision you have to make here is obviously it's like with all these guys, like, yeah, you can make the argument, like, is it worth, like, letting everybody go? Sure. Then, like, those are all those holes you have to fill, which, I mean, for most of these guys,
sure.
It's not a big deal. But, like, it's like at some point, the money's not going to be endless.
Right. But, and to your point, you can't, like, Banks always says this, right? Carl Banks always says it. You can't let everyone go, then you got to replace them. But Marcus Johnson, Darius Slayton, in my opinion, O'Shane Zimenez, these are guys who I think you can replace either in free agency or through the draft and upgrade, right? Like Darius Slayton was invisible Sunday. Like they couldn't get open. I mean, our receivers could not get open. Slayton's a nice fourth receiver, in my opinion. He's not a 2 or a 3. I think Hodgins is a 2, maybe, right? Or at the very least, he's a 3. Richie James, you can upgrade. Like that's why I said, if you look at the rest of their free agents outside of Sterling Shepard, who has injury issues and can't stay healthy, who we love, but he can't stay healthy. You got Julian Love, who we, no pun intended, love him, but did not play well Sunday, and you're going to have to pay McKinney soon. So how much you're going to dole out for your 2 safeties? That's going to cover a lot of money. So I just think a lot of the free agents can actually be upgraded. Like this roster it's been flawed all year. So to say that we have to re-sign everyone is silly because God, we got to upgrade players here. So you can't replace everyone, but you can upgrade in a number of spots. Like I think Casey Kreider's one you got to keep because he's a long snapper. He's so consistent. Like for me, it's Jones, Barkley. Then you could argue a few other guys, but Casey Kreider's like in the upper half of that of guys you have to keep.
Yeah, that's for sure here. And you talked about like free agents. I was thinking he's got a lot of money to spend. I mean, right now, even before they make any cuts or dump Golladay or whatever they want to do, they're going to have like over like $70 million. It sounds like roughly free agency here. So like, what does you think they're going to try and upgrade here in the free agent market?
Oh, inside linebacker. Oh my God, inside linebacker. Look, Darian Beavers they were excited about. Then he tore his ACL. So you don't know what you have there. They're still like Micah McFadden, but he really did not play well down the stretch. Jared Davis and Jalen Smith have been cast off for reasons. Nice players, not impact. I mean, they were gashed against the run all year. They have to improve inside linebacker. People are already saying Edmonds from Buffalo. That's where they have to. I think it could be receiver. I mean, the receiver free agent list is not impressive. So I think if they improve receiver before the draft, it might come from a trade. Because if you look at the list of free agents at receiver, it's not impressive at all. Like Juju might be the best one, and then what I was saying, it's like the 2014 fantasy team. It's like Julio Jones, AJ Green, it's a list of guys where you're like, what do we have here? So I think if they were to do something at receiver, it's either going to be in the draft, which very likely will be, or maybe they make a trade. Who knows? But I think you can improve inside linebacker with a veteran in free agency. I think that's probably where they would lean, I would guess. So,
yeah, if I was to guess with them, I would guess that honestly, like their big splash is going to be like on defense and maybe along the interior of the offensive line, and then they use the draft. Then they start to do like a sign one draft one approach at receiver, because like everybody sees the value of receiver these days is in the draft, because you're seeing to find like 10 or 12 guys to become starters like right in every draft class. So spending your big pick there and then using like a secondary player from free agents, I think would definitely be a good smart way to upgrade the receiver room.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I also think like maybe, Nick Gates is another one who's a free agent. I want him back, but I want him back at the right price. And I don't know if I want him starting. I don't know if he's the starting center. I want to upgrade Feliciano. I would love to upgrade left guard, but you also don't know what you have with Azudu. He's a rookie who got hurt. He looked good. McKesson never even got on the field, or McKeithen. He never even got on the field. He got injured early. So it's going to be interesting to see where they feel they need to improve via free agency, because they do have some young guys that are question marks that may be able to do something. But like, the interior of the line, inside linebacker, and wide receiver, those are the easy ones that right away you have to improve. And then, you can even say you're going to need another edge rusher or two, because Ojulari couldn't stay healthy. Thibodeau should improve and be even better next year. But then behind them is a free agent in Jihad Ward, and it's a free agent in O'Shane Zimenez. So you're going to need a rotation, and you're probably, if I had to guess, you're going to keep one of those guys. It wouldn't surprise me you didn't keep neither. But, so look, the Giants have their work cut out. You're also going to have to bring in another corner. I don't think if they cut Jackson, they got to bring in two corners. They probably like Cordell Flott. I think, he's going to put on some weight in the offseason probably, and he'll be better. And he got better as the season went on. But, this roster is loaded with holes right now. That's why I said 9-7-1 is absolutely amazing for the lack of talent we have.
Yeah, absolutely here. And the last question I want to talk about is the draft, because I was talking about earlier, they might have up to 11 picks. Right now, they definitely have 9. They have 4 in the top 100, including 4 in the first 3 rounds here. So, like, there's opportunities here for Joe Schoen to find a bunch of starters. Like, do you think he's kind of, like, move around the board, sit where he is, make some picks? Like, what do you think his approach to is going to be during this draft?
I don't know. I could. They moved up to get Josh Allen years ago. They traded for Stephon Diggs, which is why Chris and I are like, we're talking about, like, is that a possibility? Do they trade for a wide receiver? They've done it before. They gave Josh Allen Diggs. So will they do the same for Jones? I don't know what they would do. I've been doing some mock simulators and having a blast with that. And like, I'm coming away like, man, we're loaded now. I don't know what they'll do. It's up for debate. If they stay put, they have a lot of nice picks. I think it depends somewhat on what you do in free agency. If you make a trade, I think that does affect it a bit. I think the Giants are in a position where they can take best player available almost, every round. You could argue they need a tight end to run the seam pass. Like, Dan Bellinger's a nice player. He's a good blocker, but he's not a real threat in the receiving game yet. He could become one, but he doesn't have the natural speed that, like, I hate to say this out loud, but Evan Ingram had. But they could even go tight end in round 2 or 3, a pass catching tight end. So the beauty of it is they can go best player available in so many rounds, but also that's because you need to upgrade so many areas. So if I had to guess, I don't even want to speculate, because I don't know what Shane will do. Last year they pretty much, if memory serves, you had the 5th and 7th pick, so it was easy. They seem to take best player available and coincided with need last year. So I'll go with that this year, man. I don't know what they would do.
Yeah, I was thinking about the veteran receivers you were talking about, like, are they trading for one here? The thing is, like, this odd, because it's not really, like, unless somebody comes out and just demands a trade all of a sudden, like, the biggest name on the market now seems to be DeAndre Hopkins, who, like, is probably going to be out of Arizona. And, like, I don't know if that's the direction they want to go. The guy who's 31. He got a PED suspension this year.
Yeah, that's what Chris was saying. So he said that once on the podcast or twice. I would love it. I would love DeAndre Hopkins in blue. He just can't wear number 10. It's retired. But yeah, obviously, I don't care if he's 31. He'd be an upgrade. He'd be a tremendous upgrade. Even they would never happen. But like a Devontae Adams, I mean, that he makes so much money, and you'd have to give up so much. But those are the kind of impact players you want to try to bring in. It might come from the draft. They may not make a move like that. It may come from the draft. I mean, Shane made a point of saying today that, look, a lot of number one receivers are sitting home right now. They're not in the playoffs. So it's more about improving the overall team, but they will, one way or another, this offseason come away with a weapon for Daniel Jones. They have to.
Yeah, they absolutely do, Jerry. Thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it. Before I let you go, people follow you guys on social media and keep up with the podcast.
Yeah, at Giant Insider. Chris does most of the tweeting. He's always at the facility covering the Giants. And in I edit the newspaper, and we have the podcast that now is just once a week. Unless news breaks, it's once a week. Giant Insider podcast, pretty much on all platforms where you can find a podcast.
Absolutely, Jerry. Thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.